the mind-blowing connection between neuroscience and faith. Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to dive deep into something that's probably never crossed your mind in this way before. I'm talking about the intersection of science and faith, and trust me, this is going to be one of the most eye-opening things you've ever heard. So here's the question: can a neuroscientist, someone who studies the brain, actually prove the existence of God? Buckle up, because the answer might surprise you. You see, most of us think of science and religion as being on opposite sides of the spectrum. Science is all about facts, experiments, things you can see and measure. Religion, on the other hand, is about faith, belief in the unseen. But what if I told you that a neuroscientist, someone who literally studies how the brain works, says that believing in God and even praying has a measurable, positive impact on your brain? Let's break it down.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Imagine this: our brains are these super complex machines, more intricate than any computer we've ever built. Every thought, every feeling, every experience gets processed and stored in this intricate network of neurons. But here's the thing: when you start to examine how the brain functions, especially in relation to things like prayer, you start to see something absolutely mind-blowing. First, let's talk about neuroplasticity. The brain isn't static. It can change, adapt, and rewire itself based on what we do and think. So what happens when you pray? Science has shown that when people engage in prayer or meditation, the parts of the brain responsible for things like focus, emotional regulation, and even empathy light up. It's like your brain is getting a workout, and just like going to the gym, the more you do it, the stronger those connections get. But let me ask you this: have you ever stopped to think about how complex your own thoughts are? Right now, as you're watching this, your brain is processing millions of bits of information: the sound of my voice, the images on your screen, even your own thoughts about what I'm saying. Isn't that kind of miraculous? Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, so prayer has an effect on the brain. But does that really prove God exists? Well, here's where we're going to go a little deeper. You see, science can't prove or disprove the existence of God in a traditional sense. But what it can show us is that there's something happening when we pray that goes beyond just the physical. It's like we're tapping into something larger than ourselves, something beyond what we can see or measure. So, if you're still with me, let's take this a step further. What if prayer isn't just about asking for things or saying words? What if it's about aligning your mind, body, and spirit with something greater, something we don't fully understand yet? And here's where we bring in the practical advice. If you've never tried prayer before, or if you've always thought of it as just a religious practice, what if you approached it like a workout for your brain? Just like going to the gym strengthens your muscles, prayer can strengthen your mind and soul. You don't have to believe in God right away, but what if you just tried it? What if you gave it a shot and saw what happened? All right, before we move on, I want you to think about this. Why do you think something as ancient and universal as prayer exists in almost every culture? Is it just a coincidence, or is there something more going on that we're only beginning to understand? The neuroscientific evidence that prayer changes your brain. Welcome back. Now that we've laid the groundwork, let's dive into the real meat of the matter. In this part, we're going to look at the hard evidence, the studies, the data, the brain scans that prove something real is happening when people pray. And trust me, it's going to blow your mind. So let's start with the research. Neuroscientists have been studying the effects of prayer and meditation for years. One study in particular used brain imaging to look at what happens when people pray. What did they find? Well, when someone prays, the parts of the brain associated with self-control, compassion, and emotional stability light up like fireworks. It's like your brain is getting a tune-up, and the effects aren't just temporary, they actually stick around. Let me tell you a crazy story. There was this neuroscientist who was studying a group of monks who had been meditating and praying for decades. When they scanned their brains, they found that these monks had thicker regions in their brain that controlled things like attention and self-awareness. That's right, their brains had physically changed over time because of their mental and spiritual practices. Think about that for a second. These guys weren't lifting weights or running marathons, they were praying. And yet, their brains were adapting, growing stronger, more resilient. But it's not just monks or religious people who experience this. Even if you're totally new to prayer, studies have shown that just a few weeks of regular prayer or meditation can start to change how your brain functions. And here's where it gets interesting. These changes aren't just about making you feel good. They can actually help you deal with stress, anxiety, and even physical pain. It's like your brain becomes more resilient, more able to handle the challenges life throws at you. Now, if you're wondering how this all connects to God, let me ask you this: if prayer can have such a profound impact on our brains, doesn't it suggest that there's something more going on? Something beyond just the physical? I mean, why would something like prayer, something that's been practiced for thousands of years, have this kind of effect if it wasn't tapping into something real? Here's another way to think about it. If you were designing a brain, wouldn't you want to include a mechanism that allows it to connect with something greater, something beyond itself? It's almost like prayer is hardwired into us, like it's a part of who we are as human beings, and that's something science is only just beginning to understand. But here's the million-dollar question: is prayer just a psychological tool, or is it a way for us to connect with the divine? That's something you'll have to think about for yourself. But one thing's for sure, the evidence is clear. Prayer changes your brain in ways that science can measure, but the why behind it is still a mystery. How prayer shapes the world around you more than you think. All right, we've talked about how prayer changes your brain, but now let's take it a step further. What if I told you that prayer doesn't just change your mind, it can actually change the world around you? Sounds crazy, right? But stick with me, because what we're about to discuss is going to make you question everything you think you know. So here's the deal. There's a growing body of evidence that shows prayer and belief can actually influence the physical world. And no, I'm not talking about some kind of magic or supernatural power. I'm talking about how your thoughts, your intentions, and your prayers can affect reality in ways that we're only just starting to understand. Let's start with something called the placebo effect. You've probably heard of it before. It's when people experience real changes in their health, just because they believe they're being treated, even if they're not actually receiving any medication. It's a powerful demonstration of how belief can affect the body. But what's even more interesting is that prayer can have a similar effect. Studies have shown that when people pray for healing, whether for themselves or for others, there are real, measurable changes in their health outcomes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, so maybe prayer helps people feel better mentally. But does it really change the physical world? Well, let me hit you with this. There's research that suggests our intentions, our thoughts, and yes, even our prayers can influence the world on a quantum level. Quantum physics tells us that the very act of observing something can change what's being observed. So, is it really that far-fetched to think that our prayers, our focused intentions could have an impact on reality? But here's where it gets really interesting. In various spiritual traditions, there's this idea that prayer isn't just about asking for things, it's about aligning yourself with a higher purpose, a greater reality. And when you do that, when you pray with genuine intention, you start to see changes in your life that go beyond just coincidence. It's like your prayers are opening doors, shifting circumstances, and bringing new opportunities into your life. So, here's my challenge to you. What if you gave it a try? What if, for the next week, you committed to praying every day, not just for things you want, but for clarity, for alignment, for a deeper connection with the universe or with God? What might start to change in your life? And here's one last question for you to think about. If prayer can change your brain, and if it can influence the world around you, what does that say about the nature of reality itself? Is the world we live in shaped by more than just physical laws? Could it be that prayer and belief are tapping into something fundamental, something that science hasn't fully explained yet? Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive. If this video opened your mind, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we've got even more mind-blowing content coming your way. Until next time, remember, the truth is out there, and sometimes it's closer than you think.